eBay Motors and Fox Racing welcome you to episode 53 of The Lowdown Show. I'm Neil Graham. This week's chat is a good one. And I don't know about you, but I love it when everyday working people achieve extraordinary results. Like Jordan Strachan, he works 16-hour days at a coal mine in British Columbia, and yet he still found the time to race and finish the Dakar Rally. He's the ultimate underdog. But before we take the leap, let's say thanks to those who make the Lowdown possible. Picture this, you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Well, it's okay because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything, brake rotors, lights, and tire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger, Defend, and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing, and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. Jordan, I was reading about you, and in your profile for Dakar, it said, quote, "I hope it can get me out of the coal mine." And I thought you were just like making a joke or it was a metaphor, but you seriously work at a coal mine, right?
Yeah, I work full time. I actually work a lot at the coal mine, so no, I'm there usually. My regular shift is 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off, but I end up working about 21 and 7, and I work straight nights. So I'm just 21 nights, and then I'm off for 7 usually, and then do a lot of on-call stuff as well. So yeah,
And
it's
you're not working on top of the ground. You're down in the mine, correct?
no, it's all above ground mining in the Elk Valley here.
Right.
And yeah, it's I work as maintenance in the plant, so I'm an unticketed millwright. So I call myself a farm right. I know a little bit of welding, a little bit of millwrighting, a little bit of everything. So I'm the guy that just keeps them going. So they don't have any maintenance on nights. So I
Right.
kind of come out there, and if they run into problems, then I just try to get the plant and keep the plant going until day shift arrives, and then I do a lot of extra work as well at night to get work orders and stuff too. So they keep me pretty busy, which is nice. Yeah,
Now, I don't know this for sure, but I suspect you do this to feed your addiction. Is that true?
pretty much. Yeah,
Now
yeah,
we're talking motorcycles, folks. So
yeah.
don't drag your children away from the podcast. It's okay. Um, Now you're in your early 30s, and I mean you've had a long history with motorcycles. Take me through. How did you get involved with motorcycles, and then we'll work up to
Yeah, for
Dakar.
sure. No, I think my mom said I was around 2 or 3 when I first started racing. We always grew up grassroots off-road racing and all over Alberta and BC, and like my family was pretty big into racing. Like my dad was always top level racer in Canada, and then as well
Are
as
we?
my
I'm sorry,
uncle.
and we're talking motocross.
No, off-road. We never really got into the motocross thing. Like in Pincher where I'm from, like it's just every family there damn near they kind of go out and race out in the bush. So I grew up with like a lot of my friends that I still have to this day. We all grew up racing together, and
Right.
and like I say, my uncle, he's always been an international racer as well, doing multiple 6 days, and been on the trophy team for Canada quite a bit and stuff. So I kind of always had aspirations to do stuff overseas, and kind of try to be at the top level, like in Canada at least, and try to do as best as I can, kind of around the world. But no, I grew up racing, and I kind of took a short leave when I was about 18, 19, and didn't really get back onto the bike until I think it was like 20. I want to say 2017 or something like that, and kind of just fell right back into suit with it and loved it all over again. So.
Now, motorcycle racing, as I can attest to from my broken bones, can be hard on the body. And you were in something called the Sonora Rally, and
Yeah,
I read that you finished seventh and broke your back
yeah, I broke my back on day one.
on day.
That's
How many days?
it was 5 days.
And did you know it was broken?
Um, I had suspicions, like I didn't know it was broken um, until about stage 3, and I kind of talked to the team that I was racing with and told them like I think something's kind of going on, but I didn't really know, as weird as it is, like, I didn't really know how bad the crash was. It was in a pretty high speed place, and, I just woke up in the desert, so I my bike was pretty mangled, and I didn't really know exactly the extent of my injuries because you got a
Right.
lot of adrenaline and stuff, and when we got back to the bivouac, I did my best to kinda cover up the wounds and stuff so they wouldn't, medical me out of the race, and probably by about day 3 was when I was like, well, that day I was pretty sore, but I kinda thought it was a lot of muscle, and day 3, when we, kind of hit some sandier sections, when I was lifting up on the bike, I could feel separation in my back,
Right.
and that's when I was like, "Okay, so something's seriously wrong." So, I kinda just rode pretty conservative. I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna, we got 2 more days, I'll just finish," and then day I think it was day 4, we ended up actually sneaking out of the bivouac. I won't name names or whatever, but we ended up sneaking out of the bivouac and going to a hospital and got X-rays. And yeah, my it ended up being my T2, T3, T4 were broke off on the side pretty clean, and then later on, actually, I found out my C2 had a non-displaced fracture as well.
And then
So
you got out of the hospital and went back into the final day?
yeah, because the doctor in Mexico told me it's just your T's. So, like, he didn't, which, like, that's not it's not gonna paralyze you.
Right.
So I kinda just said, "Oh, well, I'll just tootle along the next day and just take my time and ride smart," which paid off really well. I think I ended up getting 4th overall that day, so that was pretty cool, and yeah, we just took it easy, and then, yeah, I ended up with a pretty decent result, I think, for my first rally. I think it was, like, my 3rd road book I ever ran or something,
Oh,
so
wow. I've got a, and not to steal your thunder here, but I've got a great story from a guy riding
yeah.
in Baja, and they were just screwing around. He crashed and cut himself up pretty badly, and they went to the doctor in town. He said, "Well, it's going to be $500 to sew it up." And he goes, "Oh man, that's too expensive." So they found a veterinarian,
Yeah, yeah.
and they stitched him up. And seriously, it's the ugliest scar you've ever seen, and it was like 15 years ago. And it looks like it was yesterday, but it was $35.
Well, that's worth it. I
So,
think that's 25
and
bucks.
and who doesn't love a good scar, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I
Exactly.
can have a scar across my face. If it's gonna cost me $500 or I can get it done cheaper for 20, I'm going for 20.
So what kind of riding have you? So you've always done off-road stuff, but you've never motocross, but always like hare scrambles or any kind of enduros. I mean that's where you've really focused, right?
Yeah, hare scrambles, enduros was kinda like the biggest thing when I was growing up. I did, like, all the AMSA and at one point it was called CMRC, did all
Yeah.
the off-road series up here. I did that at a professional level for quite a few years, and then, kinda just made a switch, like, actually my first year racing pro up here, I made a switch to kinda hard enduro as well. So, like,
Hmm.
I did Erzberg Rodeo in 2012, and then that was kinda my first international race, and
Oh,
then,
you went to Erzberg?
yeah, yeah, 2012, yeah. That
I
was
went
8.
to I went to Erzberg as a spectator, and even that was scary.
It's
Um,
wild, man.
and for those of our listeners who don't know what Erzberg is, I remember talking to the organizer, and 500 motorcycles. I wrote about it, and 500 motorcycles start in this pit. And like most motorcyclists in the world, even decent ones, would have a hard time getting out of the pit.
Oh, yeah,
And
yeah.
that's just the beginning. And the guy that runs it, he said the perfect course is the course where one rider finishes.
Yeah, Carl's a nutcase.
Carl's a nutcase.
Yeah,
And when I was the year I was there, Taddy
Taddy Blazuzak.
won. And I
Yeah,
think in the what is there 4 hours that you're allotted? Is that it?
well, it depends. Depends on who you ask, because they start pulling you off the course whenever they want. So,
Oh, really?
yeah, I had some I had some bad, just genuinely bad luck at Erzberg. I qualified pretty terrible because it's just a fast, flat out gravel road race essentially to qualify, and I think I qualified in the 4th row on day 1, but day 2 I ended up qualifying in the like just underneath. Like I would have been one of the first 5 in the 2nd row. So I
Mm.
was so close to getting a good row position, but it rained and a lot of the fast guys had bad days. So then they just took out that whole prologue. So then I ended up being in the 4th row, which kind of sucked because it's just traffic and traffic and traffic. And, I got about essentially they shut the race down right after I got out of the forest section. I kept going because I still had 3 hours, but they were trying to pull people off the course because there was thunder and lightning everywhere, and they've used that excuse a couple times. There's another Canadian I know that went through the same thing. But I just kept pushing, and I got up dynamite, and I could see the finish, and they physically pulled me off the bike. It
So,
would not let me anymore.
so why is that? Explain to me the logic behind that.
I don't know. When I went, it was rideable. Like, you talk to Tristan and these guys now, like, it's incredible what they're doing because it's not rideable anymore. Like for regular everyday guys, I don't think you can really get it, right? Unless you're racing full time, training full time, I don't think it's attainable. Back when I went, there was a lot of, just blue collar guys that could go and could finish, and there was a lot of guys that were finishing, and I don't think the organization really liked that. They wanted
Right.
to be more of a premier race, which back then it was still the hardest race in the world by a landslide, I think. From what I've been told or what I raced and what I did, but I think they were just kind of wanting to limit how many people were finishing. And they seen an opportunity when it started to rain to just start pulling people off. And there was
Uh-huh.
no lightning, thunder, and it was just spitting rain a little bit. And it rained a lot the day before. So getting out of that gully was just you might as well, you'd be better off having a jet ski. Like, I'm surprised so many people didn't water out their bikes, but yeah,
It,
no, they physically pulled me off, and I still had an hour and 20 minutes to finish, and I would have had a proper finish, but they were getting rid of everybody out of there. So
yeah, I mean, it redefined in my mind what the word impossible was, because the one section where I was, um, Doug Lampkin, who at the time,
oh, Dougie Lumpkin, yeah.
Doug Lampkin, English rider, I think at the time he was the world trials champion.
Yeah, yeah,
There was a section, and I think it was 2008 or 9 that I was there. There was a section that the best trials rider in the world couldn't ride.
yeah.
And he was carrying his motorcycle through these rocks that were the size of refrigerators.
Carl's Diner, probably, yeah.
That's it. And then it's a great story. So I'm media guys. We're being shuffled around in a car. So we come up to, and then so anyway, a guy goes by Lampkin. I think it was Taddy. Rock comes off the tire, hits him in the noggin because he's got his helmet off, trying to get unstuck, knocks him out. So they put a pause in the race. So I walk up to this Australian guy who's waiting for the race to restart. And I said, how's it going? He just looked at me and he said, fuck off. It's like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, that's about accurate. Yeah,
I'll be leaving.
yeah.
Of course, he took all my power bars and my water, which I was glad to sacrifice. I didn't really feel that I had a right to it, just watching. So yeah, you've done your bona fides. So when did you get interested in the idea of doing Dakar? Because it's the mother of all. It's the Indy 500. It's the one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's the big one. Yeah, I think it's the big one that everyone and every part of the sport wants to go do. Whether it's if you're doing hard enduro and 6 days or whatever, everyone I talk to, that's kind of the one they all want to do, right? And I kind of just lucked out, to be honest. I was actually planning on going to Ironman the 1,000, and that was kind of always a big dream of mine, and still is. So I'd love to go do that. But no, I was out elk hunting with Mike Hayroth, and he kind of told me, he's like, "Well, why don't you try rally?" And a good friend of mine, Clint Revere, he's always been running rallies. He's a local guy. I grew up with him. I'm good buddies with his kids, and he's really good friends with my dad, my uncle. So I kind of messaged him up, and he said, "Yeah, it's really fun. Come give her a shot." So he lent me a bunch of Icos and gave me some road books, and I kind of just really liked it. I've always liked the high speed stuff, so it kind of transferred pretty well. And we ended up doing some road books down in Kukanusa, which is southern BC. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to give it a shot. So I built the 501 and then went to Sonora. So the rest is kind of history.
So I was talking to Lawrence Hacking a while ago. He was in the podcast. We were talking about when he did Dakar a number of years ago, a fellow Canadian, and he was saying that there was a lot of it that you just can't prepare for. You think you're prepared, but it's not. So can you take us through the process that how does it actually work, getting involved and getting registered and then figuring out the route and support and all of that. I mean, it sounds like it's a lot to figure out.
It's a lot, yeah, like, well, now you've gotta qualify, and I got lucky enough too, like, even when I registered and applied, like, you still needed to qualify, but I still had points, from Sonora, and they were able to kinda look at times, compare, do all that stuff because, there was Skylar Howes there who's been a podium guy at Dakar, and I think is, you know, probably gonna win it pretty quick here, and, they took into account like my whole racing background. There's a lot of guys that go that don't, it's kind of a bucket list thing, and
Yeah.
maybe they just have a lot of money kind of thing. So they're trying to weed that out a little bit more because it's getting more and more dangerous every year. Like this year it was just dangerous. That's the only way.
How so? Can you give me a sense of how when you say danger?
A lot of the like my issue that I ran into a lot is a lot of the hazards that were on the book weren't hazards, and then a lot of the stuff that wasn't in the book were widowmakers. Like
Really?
me and another rider, Aaron Mayer, who used to be a factory hero guy. I ended up riding with him for quite a bit of a stage, and we're flat out 150, 160, nothing in the book, and then all of a sudden it was 6 foot deep by 6 foot wide trenches and about 30 of them in a row.
Oh,
And you're just like, I essentially taco to rear wheel, like right there, and we just got lucky. If we were going any slower, you might have just dropped down, and then you'd be done. So it just to me like they maybe could have had a little bit more. It honestly it just makes you really appreciate events like Baja Rally, where they ahead of time pay some riders to go out, verify the road book. They sit there, they come across a hazard, they write it down. So it just makes more sense to me the way that like Baja Rally does it, because then it's honestly safe. If there's a hazard in the road book, it's a hazard, and if you find a hazard that's not in that road book, you're going the wrong way. So which it's you really rely on that road book because you're going at such high speeds. Like if it says there's no hazard, you're going to open it up, right? And I ran into just a couple. Like it wasn't, it wasn't crazy bad, but a lot of the Dakar this year it wasn't a lot of sand dunes. It wasn't a lot of this. It was just rock, and it's lava rock that would just grab your tire, and then you're bucked off into the rhubarb at that point pretty quick. So to me, it they're trying to really weed out the guys with a lot of money that are just wanting to go, and they're trying to up the level to professional racers that are going there to really test themselves, test the equipment, and try to get good for a good finish. So that's kind of what I noticed when we were there, and a lot of the car guys too said it was just rough. Like this year was really rocky, and which I kind of liked. I was having some pretty big issues, but I'm usually pretty fond of the rocks. Not at super high speeds, but overall, I didn't really mind it. It was kind of more up my riding style, but the dunes were very soft. Like let off your gas and your front tire dives 3 feet into the dunes. Like it's wild. I've never experienced it. It was like riding in snow.
talking about this notion of not exactly knowing where the hazards are. I mean, that must really play in your mind though, because you got to go hard because it's a race. You race. You're not there to
Yeah.
trail ride, so you've got to give it. But if you don't trust, where the hazards are, where they're noted, I mean, does that kind of get in? That must get in your head though.
Yeah, it slows you down a little bit, and I think the biggest problem is put so much time into trying to slow riders down, like with the going down to 450s and all this other stuff. But manufacturers will get the same amount of power out of a 450 as they will a 690 now, so
Yeah.
you're not really gaining anything. And they do try their best. Like safety's crazy. They've got so many helicopters. Like it's you crash, someone's on the phone on your bike going, "Are you okay? What's going on?" Like there's definitely a lot of safety at Dakar, but there was just issues like for a rider like me, I kind of figured out the issues pretty quick with the hazard and stuff, and I can just slow down. I'm not there to it's not my full-time job,
Yeah.
but guys like Aaron, he relies on that road book, and he's going wide open the whole time. He's a top 10 guy easily. He's won races everywhere else. So
Right.
he relies on that road book. And, it was a shame when I seen him that I think should have been kind of more or less of a marked hazard wash. And, I come up and his bike's just damn near snapped in two and he's gone in helicopters. So that slows you down pretty quick.
Yeah.
But overall, like I say, it's definitely a lot more dangerous as it is in every other sport for the really, really fast, dedicated guys. And, kind of guys like me, I'm no slouch on a bike by any means, but I'm there to get a finish my first year.
Yeah.
And I had a lot of issues that set me back right away, like 10, 15 hours. So I just said, I'm not in this for, I'm in this to finish now. Whether I want to compete or not, it doesn't make any sense. I'm so far back. So I just said, let's just take it easy. So I had no problem slowing down. But I seen a lot of other riders that, you're gonna act like a hot dog, you're gonna end up looking like a wiener out here pretty quick. Like, it's pretty wild. So, but
Well, tell me about some of those issues you had off the top that slowed you down, because Dakar just seems to, everyone I've ever spoken to that's done it. I mean, there's always sort of this litany, this list of
oh yeah,
things that any sane person would just say, "Oh, the hell with it." But
yeah.
it's just part of the challenge. So what specifically affected you?
So, like I had factory support from Cove, and I'm working with that now as well. But essentially, Cove hired a secondary team, and awesome team. I really loved the people there, and then they're great people, good mechanics, but they prepped the bike with the ERTF system, and which is all your electronic road book, your ICOs, your the calling device, all that stuff, right? And they crossed a bunch of wires in my tower. So I kept burning out rectifiers, stators. I would blow every single fuse, and I'd have to loop everything with wire.
Oh
And
God.
it got to the point where I'd have the tanks off the bike at least once a day, and I'd essentially be rebuilding a wiring harness with, a Leatherman and some basic tools. And I was carrying like I carried a spare stator. I was carrying, 20 pounds of electrical components, essentially just going, okay, like I need to get through.
Right.
And we didn't figure out the issue. We just kept wondering if it was the heat coming off the bike where the battery was and all the electrical components, if it was deflecting up and kind of melting these things. Because I'm a bigger guy, so that like my bike was, I think, running a little bit hotter, especially in the dunes. But I was pretty easy on the clutch and stuff, so I wasn't thinking it was really anything motor wise. And then stage 8, it was either stage 7 or stage 8, I can't remember. You'd actually honestly have to ask Willem, because he was the one that found me crying in the dunes, as he says. But
So, hold on a second. We can't just go past that one. What happened? Was this a crash or mechanical?
no, so when he came up, he thought I was like getting helicoptered out of there because I had a bad wreck, because there was parts scattered all over the desert floor. And it's because I had all my tanks off, I had everything off, my tower was the only thing I didn't touch, which ultimately was the issue. But everything was on the desert floor. He rolls up and he sees me laying on the ground. I was underneath my bike putting like
Oh, he thought it was, oh, I get it. He thought it was a crash when really
yeah,
you were just,
he thought I wadded or whatever. But
oh
no,
God.
I was replacing my stator and my regulator, but it ended up not being either of those things. I just was like, it never ended up being a stator. It was like I would just replace them just out of like I'm not an electrician, so I was like, well, I don't know, no spark. Like I have no idea what's going on. So I'd replace that stuff, and later on that stage, I broke down about 10 times that day. I would just melt the fuses that people would give me, or I'd melt the wiring or whatever. And eventually, funny enough, the guy that actually saved my ass on stage 2, that kept boosting me during the chrono stage, he was in a rally experience, name's Badur, and he came up and ultimately said, nope, I'm not doing this again. We're going to figure out what the problem is. So we actually took the tower apart and everything, and sure as shit, there was all the ERTF wiring was going into this harness, straight to the harness, and it was just melted. So I was like, well, there's the problem. So I took my Leatherman, I cut the harness, just left everything open to atmosphere, and then on with our way. And then I brought the bike back to Cove, and I said, here's the problem. I've got 3 hours to sleep, figure it out. And then they rebuilt it and put a new harness and stuff on, and well, fixed the harness actually. And then we ended up not having any issues after that. So that was pretty good.
And now that was right at the beginning, correct?
No, that was stage 7 or 8. I was having issues the whole time and I couldn't figure out what it was because I was doing 90% of my maintenance. Well, I did all of my maintenance, tires and everything until stage 7, or I think it was stage 8. I did all my maintenance till stage 8. And then I ended up getting them to do the harness with Pedregal because I was in Rally 2, so I was allowed a mechanic.
Yes.
And then after that, I was so short on sleep, I ended up hiring Pedregal to, because we lost I was the only racer they had left in the whole team. So I was like, well, you guys got some free mechanics, so how much is it going to cost to have a mechanic full time for the rest of the stages? So it worked out really well.
Let's take a break with a few words from our sponsors. Picture this: you're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts that you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease. And because you're committed to riding that thing farther than the odometer can even handle, you start thinking to yourself, do you know what? I could also probably use some new brakes, maybe a shock. This baby deserves a new air filter. So you head straight back to eBay. You can find any part you need there. It's unreal, from headlights to air filters to exhaust systems, all the way to those carbon fiber rims you've been fancying. eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams. And you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit, because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major and mods, well, they're always intense. So you need to know those parts are guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in, wrench first. And on the off chance that you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back. Simple as that. You know what you love more than your bike itself, and that is, of course, riding it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance and locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay, minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info to get the exact parts that fit. When you see that green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. Well, now that you know all of this, just imagine standing at that open garage door looking at the bike you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible, whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. In over 50 years of connecting riders to dirt, Fox Racing has learned that the best gear always has a discernible purpose and a strong point of view. The Ranger Defend and Recon Adventure Collection takes a minimalist approach to product design, with a clear mission of providing everything you need in adventure-ready gear and absolutely nothing you don't need. Minimalist chassis, fully seam sealed with Gore-Tex waterproofing and D30 CE level protection across the board. This gear is every bit as pure as the adventure you're chasing. Now back to my conversation with Jordan Strachan. The Lowdown Show is presented by advrider.com and supported by ebaymotors.com. So how do you deal? So how many days total is the Dakar? How many days of riding?
So like with your prologue and everything, so you've got 2 stages that are 2 days that they mark as one stage. So it's realistically it's like 15 stages or 15 days of racing, I think is what you end up actually racing. And I remember being on day 13, like the racing day 13, and I'm like, oh, we're getting pretty close to the end. And they're like, you still got 2 more days. And I'm like, son of a bitch. I was like, I thought we were almost done. I was like, a little tear came down my eye. I was like, oh man.
How do you deal with the physical constraints? Because I mean, that's a lot of riding. I mean, just if you're going on a sport touring trip with your wife or girlfriend or something,
Yeah.
and you ride for 15 days in a row on a Goldwing,
Yeah.
it's your ass hurts.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
all these days, especially with all the mechanical issues and just the rigor of riding off road. I mean, how do you did you feel physically broken down, or were you fit enough to take it in stride?
Um, yeah, like the hardest parts, it's the liaisons and stuff. Like, we had liaisons.
Explain that to us.
So like before the stage, a lot of them you'll have like a 200-kilometer liaison, then you go race for 450K, and then you'll have another 200 or whatever plus liaison back. And like the one day we had, it was like a 500 and I want to say 550-kilometer liaison just on the highway.
Ugh.
So you get monkey butt, and you need to do everything in your power to address that, because I forgot my monkey butt powder in Canada. So I
Right.
was like, oh, I'll just whatever. I'll just take it easy. I'll ride on different cheeks and stuff. But stage 2, I had scabs on my ass, and I was like, all right, well, we're kind of too far now. Like, we're nothing I can do to resolve this. So I ended up actually getting some cream from this German guy, and he came up and he's like, you want some butt cream? Will help you liaison. And I'm like, yeah, dude, give me some of your butt cream. Like,
And once again, context is everything. If you're in a
oh,
nightclub and somebody has that conversation, you may want to think it through. But
yeah,
in
yeah.
this context, why not? I
But yeah,
mean,
no, that's the hardest part.
I didn't realize those sort of linking stages. And just to clarify, you're not racing. You're just getting from one
Yeah,
physical location to another, correct?
you're getting from the start to the start stage, and yeah,
Right.
it's it's a lot of highway that you ride, which is not real fun on really realistically any motorcycle. So
True. True. Yeah. But
especially
you're on a 450 with knobbies.
yeah, so it's
Ooh.
and like the biggest liaison we did, like I said, it was like 520, 550, I can't remember.
Wow.
I forgot my earbuds. So I just listened to wind in my helmet for, essentially 5 hours. And I'm like, this
Right.
is cool. Like, this is, why am I here? I'm like, this is dumb. Like, I paid to do this. This is stupid.
Before you do anything that's challenging, there's and I just draw from my own experience. There's the perception of what you think it's going to be,
Yeah.
and then there's the reality of what it is.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah.
So you probably, I'm guessing, you watched a car and you watched it on TV, and it's pretty cool when you see those helicopter images and those guys flying through the sand. I mean, I look at that and I think, no, I can't do that. But huge admiration, and it's fascinating to watch. And I'm sure you did the same. And then when you're in it, I mean, is it a really sort of rude awakening about how hard it is?
Yeah. It's not what I was told it was going to be. I was told originally it was going to be a lot of sand, and I liked the fast sand section. I thought it was going to be really fast and flowy more than anything. And it was just jagged 90-degree turns in rock for
Ugh.
500 to 700 kilometers a day. It was brutal. And, like, you can't really prepare for something like that, especially you can put a lot of seat time on a bike, but putting race time on a bike that long is it's completely different. So I tell people, like, you can train in the sand all you want. I think the best thing you can do to train for Dakar is go to Baja Rally, which is a lot of rock, a lot of technical riding, which was what Dakar was. So,
Right.
you start to learn throughout the stages, is you can kind of you start understanding the guy that made the book. So, like, if I just seen a 90-degree
Mm.
turn for no reason going into the garbage rocks, I'm like, I'm just gonna go past that. I don't need that. And you've got to kind of play the game a little bit, and then you'd be out there and you'd see a hot line, and you're like, well, that's definitely some top pro that's skipping past this garbage. So, like, you'd be able to figure out the book a little bit more and the guy that was writing it. So it's putting on a lot of miles, and they really, this year it seemed like it was, I think it was Ricky was talking about, or it might have been Skylar, but it's a lot of 90-degree turns in rocks to go to get a waypoint or something like that. And
It's not very romantic sounding,
no,
technical through rocks. It's not what you think of when you think of the word Dakar, is it?
yeah, no, you think fast sand, and that's what I
Exactly.
thought. And I got there, I'm
Yeah.
like, what's going on here?
Now, what about maintaining focus? I mean, motorcycling fascinates me, especially racing. I road race, and that notion of, and I think why it can be so exhausting is, you're trying to stay loose
Yeah,
because
yeah,
the motorcycle's telling you things that you need to know about traction, so you have to be loose, but the speeds and the risk, there's a tendency to tighten up, especially if you're tired or you're starting to lose focus. How was it maintaining focus for that many days with that intensity of riding? Did you find that, did your mind wander, or were you right there, or did it vary?
um, I actually kind of had like a good, I guess, outlook on it. Like I work so much, like, I work 12 to 16-hour days at the coal mine.
Yeah.
And I'm like, essentially, I do that for 21 days. So I'll just go ride a dirt bike for 2 weeks and it'll be just having fun on a dirt bike. I was like, and like my attitude never changed. Like I'm pretty used to lack of sleep and all that stuff. And I just, it to me, like the physical part was pretty hard because I've had some pretty bad injuries in the past. So by about stage, 10, I was hurting pretty good. But, luckily the team that I was with, they had like a masseuse and all this stuff and a sports therapist. So you kind of work with them pretty close. And I don't really like taking Advil or anything like that. I just don't, I just don't for no particular reason. But
Right.
it's important to stay hydrated and like the food it's not bad, but maybe there's nights that there's nothing you really want to eat, but you just need to keep those calories coming because you're burning. I lost 20 pounds and I was eating a lot. Like I
Wow.
was eating as much as I could, and for supplements and stuff, like I always found like supplements like liquid IV really help keep me focused because it keeps you hydrated. It has a bunch of different vitamins and all that stuff in it. So I've always been an advocate. I'd carry a couple of those with me, and then when you'd get to like a neutralization zone, which is like a gas check or something like that, I'd go sit in the tent quickly because usually you have about half hour or something like that. I'd sit in the tent, have some liquid IV, have a power bar, and then just you're on with your day. You just need to keep chipping away at it. A lot of guys I seen that ended up ultimately not finishing is, they didn't have the I think it's the grit really that you need just to put your head down and go, okay, like it's gonna suck tomorrow, but these are the steps I need to take to get through it. A lot of people just got on and went. But you kind of got to break down each stage and go, okay, well, when I get to the neutralization, especially tomorrow, if it's a 100-kilometer liaison to a 300-kilometer special, neutralizations at 310, like I'm going to need power bar, I'm going to need liquid IV, I'm going to have to hydrate better. Like you really have to break down everything
Right.
because your mind starts getting a little cloudy, especially like one of the most dangerous things is if you're doing a 500-kilometer liaison and then you got to go race. Your mind's
I can't imagine. Can't
like
imagine.
you're already out of it. So like, I listened to wind in my helmet for 500K and then I got to go race 172 kilometers in pretty dangerous sand, just super soft sand. So you're bobbling everywhere because you just sat on a bike for 5 hours not doing anything, So that's the tough part is you got to keep your head in the game, and when you have issues, you can't let them snowball. You have to try to address them right away because mine snowballed, like I say, until about stage 7 or 8. And I'm mechanically inclined enough that I was able to keep going, but it just breaks your will every time something happens. You're like, well, there's an hour, there's 5 hours, there's 6 hours, like it just keeps knocking you down. So you kind of got to separate yourself from everybody else and say, okay, I'm here to finish. Ultimately, there's other people that are having way worse luck than me. I watched a lot of guys blow motors, and they spent just as much as me getting there. So
Yeah.
you kind of just got to race your own race. And like I never looked at the times one time. I didn't care. I was like, you know what? It might be different if I was running top 10, top 20, but ultimately, with issues and stuff, I just said, it's just not worth even looking. It'll just stress me out. I just came back to the bivouac, go through the bike, tear it down, new tires, new bibs, oil, whatever it is I needed, and then I just go to sleep. So,
As you mentioned, it's not a cheap thing to do. If you don't mind sharing, what did Dakar cost you?
um, I haven't really broke it down because I'm a little too nervous.
I'm the same. I'm the same way. I never add anything up.
No, I'd say it's you're if I didn't have the support that I had from, Cove Canada and, all my other good sponsors and stuff too, like it would have probably cost me about, if you want to just upright and go full support, which a lot of people do, where they'll hire a team and all that stuff, you're about 160,000 US.
Wow.
But I did it. I essentially raw dog Dakar because I didn't even know I was going to go. Willem called me and said, I'm going to Dakar. And I'm like, sure, I'll apply. And I didn't really think I was going to get accepted. And when I did, I'm like, oh, okay, well, I guess I got to organize a bike. And then Cove stepped in and they saved me a lot of money with giving me a bike there. And then, I essentially paid for flights. I paid for my entry, which is, I can't remember how that ends up being close to, all said and done, just to get there without a bike, you're about 40,000 Canadian. It cost me around 60 to 70,000, and that's with a lot of support. So
Wow.
yeah, I was really grateful in that because, like I say, it probably would have cost me the cheapest way I would have been able to do it without support would have probably been 150, probably 160,000 Canadian, and that's with just going with a pretty generic team and not really having any support. Like I opted out of having a mechanic for 90% of the race because that's essentially €2,000 a day. And I'm
Yeah.
like, well, I'm not going to do that. I'll just pull wrenches on my own bike, which isn't very fun. But I've been doing it my whole life, so I didn't really care. And it's only 14 days. I pull wrenches at the mine for 16 hours, so working on a bike.
I like your mindset. It's like, oh fuck it, it's not the mine. I'll be fine.
Yeah, not
That's
getting
it.
ripped on by Cole pulling a wrench. So whatever. At least it's only in a sandstorm, so that's cool.
Your choice of motorcycle. Now, a few years ago, if you said to someone, "I'm riding a Chinese motorcycle
Yeah,
at Dakar," they would say, "You're nuts.
yeah, you're crazy. Yeah.
You would have never done it." But a lot of our because they're making a splash along with CF Moto and some other Chinese brands are in the North American market. How was the bike?
Um, every issue I had with the bike had nothing to do with Cove. Like I say, it was a lot of prep that kind of screwed me, but I've raced. Actually, funny enough, I just got back from Alberta Power Sports, where Josh and Henry, the importers, that's their shop, and we did a kind of a tear down on my 450 FSE, which was my Baja Rally bike. Man, they're pretty good. Like there's obviously always small little things that I change just for personal preference and stuff. And there's maybe things I'd like to see in the future change, maybe just on the platform, but there's nothing wrong with them. They're really good bikes and they're super durable. Like we took my motor apart stage 6 because I took in some sand and we just popped the cylinder off and looked at the piston and it looked brand new. Like they're really good bikes, but along with anything, you know, their ongoing development. And that's what Dakar's for, is to test these bikes to the absolute nuts and see where their fail points are. And Cove had one pretty good failure in the motor with Mason, but I, you know, you give someone of that caliber any bike, they're gonna hurt the bike.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I
that's right.
watched a lot of KTM's and Hondas, whether they're factory or not, blow motors. So I was pretty happy with the platform on the bike that I had and with the mechanics going on in there. And it's they're good bikes. I really believe in them, and I enjoy what they're doing. They just reconstructed their race team this year, and I've been talking with them, so they're always pushing for better results, and they're always taking feedback. Just even through regular consumers. They address the problems that they're hearing, which is pretty cool, being ultimately a smaller brand. So,
Right.
you don't get that uh, personal stuff with KTM or Honda or whatever. They don't really care what you like or what you don't. This is what we're selling, and they kind of take a lot of their advice from their development riders and racers and stuff, which is a good thing too. But I'd compare I think the quality's right up there with KTM for sure. I believe that anyways. And I've built quite a few bikes and I've raced every color under the sun. So
Right.
I've got pretty good experience with the ongoings of each and every brand. And I'm very happy with Kobe.
What was the feeling when you were nearing the end of the rally and that last day and finally you pull into where it all ends? And I mean, what was the sensation? I mean, I'm sure it's not that much different to somebody who scales Everest or I mean, that must have been, well, you tell me, what was it like?
Yeah, it was really cool. Like being able to finish Dakar, I think is just a crazy feat. It was a little less emotional than I thought. I think I was more or less kind of stuck with my ego, and wasn't exactly where I wanted to finish. And it took a while to sit in and to go, okay, like you actually did something very cool, and not a lot of people get the opportunity, which is the biggest thing. Like I believe that there's a lot of Canadians out there that are a lot better than I am, that need to get to Dakar, but just financially can't, or don't have the support, and they could probably get a lot better result than I can. And that's always a hard part too, right? And it was a cool feeling. Yeah, like it's unexplainable when you cross that line after having just the roughest 2 weeks of your life. And
and paying a lot of money to have
yeah,
the
paying a
roughest
lot of
doing
money.
it.
Yeah,
I'm
being
gonna
homeless.
torture myself. Here's 70 grand. Go at me.
Yeah, no, it was cool. I just it paid off. It just it made it feel like everything paid off, your struggles and stuff. So it was neat. The biggest thing, I just wanted a cold beer at the end. That was like my number one. I was craving it, and then you get there, and yeah, you can't have beer in Saudi. So you know that was the worst part about Dakar for me.
Not getting that beer at the end.
I
As a
just
friend,
wanted
a friend of mine says that he says the whole purpose of motorcycling is to make that beer at the end of the day taste better.
That's exactly it.
There's no other point to motorcycling. He said that you get wet, those seats are all uncomfortable, but man, that beer
Yeah, you get
is
crispy beer at the end there. That's all. That's all it is. It's just a couple guys riding bikes, being dudes that would like a crispy beer at the end of the day. That's all riding is. So
So what's next for you? I mean, you've done this thing that a lot of riders, dream about. I mean, very few people. I mean, you say Dakar, and to me, the notion of when someone says they rode Dakar, the idea of a finishing position is irrelevant. In my mind, it's just like, Jesus, you did it. So what's next for you? Would you go back?
um yeah, like I'm working on getting back there. Obviously I can't, like, financially afford to go by like on my own like I did kind of the first time. You know, I'm still homeless, so I'm like in the process of like building a house out in Wassa and all that stuff. So I gotta kind of put a, mainly focus on that for a bit. But I'm working pretty closely with Kobe and a couple other people, and we're gonna try to get back there. I'm like borderline delusional with how much I believe in myself. So I think that I can go back and get a really good result, and I truly believe that. So I'd like to go back and actually race and see exactly where I just pair up with the world's best riders, and just to see. It's kind of an empty spot in me right now, and I'd like to kind of just get that figured out. And maybe Africa Eco, I'd really like to go try that. Or I'm trying to convince Cove to give me an 800X and go beat Paul Terrace's CC record at Romaniacs would be really cool too. So yeah, we'll see what we can get figured out anyways.
In closing words from eBay Motors. Picture this: you're halfway through a DIY motorcycle fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. Well, it's okay, because whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brake rotors, lights, entire exhaust systems, whatever you need. And it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at prices you'll love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Thank you for listening to The Lowdown Show.